Good morning, everyone. I'm going to hand over to Karina, Ambartsoumian-Clough, who's going to introduce our webinar this morning.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining the Stateless Protection Act briefing and education event. My name is Karina Ambartsoumian-Clough. I am the Executive Director of United Stateless. In a couple of minutes, you will hear from Senator Cardin and Congressman Raskin from the great state of Maryland. We will then show a 10-minute film followed by a panel discussion where you will hear more from those directly impacted by statelessness. We will have time for a Q&A at the end, and if you have a question, please drop it at the Q&A toolbar. The webinar chat is disabled. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Senator Benjamin Cardin and Congressman Raskin.
Karina, first of all, thank you very much for your leadership on United Stateless. We appreciate you bringing us all together for this human rights challenge that we have here in America. It affects upwards to 200,000 people. I want to thank HIAS for their participation and the work that they do in regards to vulnerable people that are in our country. I also want to acknowledge my dear friend, Jamie Raskin, and his leadership on this issue and so many other issues that affect the rights, the human rights of people here in America and around the world. We're really proud to be with you as we talk about legislation that we're going to be reintroducing, the Stateless Protection Act. And it's kind of pretty simple as to what we do. We know that there's various reasons why people are stateless, and we'll talk about that during this panel today. But one thing is clear, they're entitled to rights. And America has been one of the leaders in the world in protecting the rights of individuals who are vulnerable. We have the temporary protective status laws that deal with individuals that are not safe in their home country. We want to use a similar model for the stateless people that are here in the United States. The legislation would give them legal status so that they are protected under our laws. It would give them the ability to get legal permanent status here in the United States, legal permanent residency, and then lead ultimately to citizenship. Make it clear they have to pass the normal background checks to make sure that everything is as it should be, but it gives the protection that we think is the values that this nation stands for. This is not unusual. We've done this in the past. In fact, let me just point out that in the United States Senate, we passed legislation in 2013, comprehensive immigration reform, by an overwhelming majority. It wasn't a close vote in the United States Senate, bipartisan. And it included protection for our stateless individuals here in the United States. So we've done this before. This should not be a controversial issue. We're doing it as a standalone bill because of the vulnerability of these individuals who are currently in our country. But here's the challenge. Most people don't know about this. And that's why we're so proud that you're doing this event today for awareness of stateless people that are here in the United States, and that the legislation that Senator Congressman Raskin and I have introduced, the Stateless Protection Act, your help in getting that to the finish line. Let's get more co-sponsors. Let's get that bill passed. And let's provide other protections. And we know we're working with the Department of Homeland Security in regards to how stateless individuals are treated here in the United States. There's a lot that we can do. The United States has truly always been a leader on protecting human rights. This is a human rights challenge that we need to meet. So thank you for doing this, and I'm proud to be on your team.
Thank you, Senator. We cannot express enough for our gratitude for the dynamic leadership of yours, Congressman, whose vigorous efforts have the potential to save the lives of thousands of families and individuals affected by statelessness. Now I would like to pass it over to Matt.
Hi, folks. Just doing some logistics here. Senator, thank you for your remarks. We are now going to move into a screening of our film on statelessness. The film lasts around 10 minutes, and then we'll have a panel discussion and a Q&A. If you do have a question for our panelists later on, please, at the bottom of the webinar in your Zoom panel, there's a Q&A button. You can drop a question in there and we'll make sure it gets addressed. I'm going to screen the film through the Zoom. and we'll watch it that way. But if you would prefer to watch it on your own browser and avoid any glitches of watching through Zoom, I've just dropped the link in the chat there, and you should be able to access it that way. So if you wanted to go away, watch the 10-minute film, keep your Zoom window open, and then come back here for the panel discussion and Q&A, you could do it that way. But for now, I'm going to move us into sharing the screen so I can get the webinar here. Karina, I think you're going to need to make me the host there if you have already. I think there may be an issue with screen sharing on my... Oh, here we go. Got it. Sorry, folks. Typical. So we're going to watch this film. So this film was directed by Alicia Sully, and it was made by a production company called What Took You So Long. It features some of our panelists here today, and it explores the issues of statelessness. So I'm going to go ahead and play the film at full screen through the Zoom browser. I also want to make sure that I'm sharing my audio. So bear with me 1 second. Share sound. We practiced. Can you tell? Okay. Here we go.
Statelessness is not having citizenship in any country in the world. It is often described as citizens of nowhere.
It's someone that sounds like me, that looks like me, that dresses like me. Your next door neighbor, your daughter's friend, you know, your son's girlfriend could be stateless.
Actually, I didn't know I was stateless until 2 years ago, during the pandemic, kind of. I had never heard the word stateless.
A stateless person is not recognized as a citizen by any country in the world. Stateless people lack identity documents like birth certificate or passport, and they have no way to acquire them.
My parents had Albanian passports. They were able to renew that. I never had a passport.
I was never given a passport, even when I was born in France. They have a law saying that both your parents need to be French, a French citizen, in order for you to be French. No one knew that, and I only started asking that question when I was like 18, when I wanted to travel a little bit, go like at least to Canada. And I found out you need something called a passport, so that brought up the whole talk about where is it.
Those born in the United States are granted citizenship as part of the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. Unlike the United States, not every country provides citizenship to those born on its territory. While 33 countries offer birthright citizenship, 162 countries do not.
Hello, Shara. So Kuwait, if you're born there, you are not qualified to have a citizenship. My mother, she's a citizen, but a man passes down his citizenship, a woman can't. And so we ended up being stateless. You know, there's at least 20-something countries that discriminate against women. This is 2022 and we still have these issues. With normal average people that you pass by, you think, oh, you know, these are normal people from the community, but you don't know. I pay taxes and it drives me crazy.
Dana was 4 years old when she arrived with her family from Kuwait. They settled in Brooklyn.
Yeah, me and my mom in Greece. My little double chin as a baby. In Greece, my parents faced discrimination for being Albanian. They got on a plane and they went to New York. From New York, they rented a car and drove to Connecticut with a map, with one of those like giant maps that you have to fold up to your pocket and open up, and it's about this big. Where are we right now?
Diana was born in Greece and arrived to New York when she was 1.5 years old with her Albanian parents.
It's like a block down here, I believe. It's like an 8-minute walk, I think, but it's like this way.
This is where it all began for me. Flushing Meadows Corona Park, I guess you would define it as the humble beginning. Basically was raised in that park. You know, every morning my grandparents would take me there. A 5-year-old, 6-year-old me trying to climb the bottom of that thing Everybody used to bust their ass going up there, and everybody used to bust their ass coming down. It was one of the most fun and memorable memories I have over here. The hospital attending records. And this is the neighborhood we're just in.
Philip was born in France and arrived in the United States as a 2-year-old with his Chinese family. They settled in Queens.
This is me and my sister.
The climax of my life was when ICE took me. That's when it made me really try to push for my future. But it also broke me. It broke something in me, which was freedom. The whole scene of them coming to my house, it was just crazy. Like, I'm just about to wake up to go to school, but like treating a minor also like with shackles and handcuffs is like, and then bullying a minor. This is where I couldn't understand. You are grown men. You're bullying a little girl?
Dana was 15 when she was put in immigration detention for 6 months. She was released because she could not be deported.
A person is in the States for so long, they can't get deported. So what is the solution?
Every year, Dana has to report to the same immigration authorities that detained her.
That's the building where I got married in. That was the courthouse. And it's so unique because if you look across the street, that's the immigration building.
Dana's husband is a United States citizen, and so is their 2-year-old son.
This is the only thing I got from Paris when I was born to this day. Like, if I lose this, I got nothing else. Trying to figure out exactly what the hell I was, you know? It was just, I didn't know what I was, and no one could really tell me what I was. So I went to ask both the Chinese and the French consulate. And I would say those 2 experiences was probably the worst experience I've ever had. He didn't even bother looking at any of my paperwork that I brought in with me. He just said, no, I can't help you. You can't be helped in this situation. Your parents are not French. There's ICE outside. We didn't know. It's not like we chose to become, you know, this, and we're asking for help, you know? So, like, when someone say that to you, you get pretty mad.
Philip has had numerous lawyers try to help him change his status. None have been successful.
I was smart, I worked hard, I studied hard, but I didn't think an Ivy League was in my reach. I visited Harvard, I saw they had a need-based blind admissions process, and they were like, if you get in, it's no problem, like just get in. I remember when I was actually applying to Harvard and interviewing, I told my interviewer about my status. He had never met anybody like that. So he told me afterwards that meeting me made him more aware of the issue.
Diana graduated from Harvard University in 2022. Despite knowing she has a complicated immigration status, she has only known she is stateless since 2020.
The pandemic hit, and for some reason, I think I was procrastinating my homework or something. First, and I came across a webpage on statelessness, and I was reading it, and I was like, wait a minute, this makes a little bit too much sense. This is a little bit too much, like, it's too accurate. The first story I see is Karina's.
I was born in a country that didn't give passports to children under the age of 16. You were literally, my name is literally on the back of my mom's passport, just like written. I was a mixed Armenian-Ukrainian. This is my grandmother. Over 200,000 people in the United States are believed to be stateless or at risk of statelessness.
I don't have a driver's license because I don't have proper ID. Okay, I mean, I don't want to bore you to tears with all this, but that's all trying to get my green card back. We're real close. And the only thing is, will I be alive?
I don't want people to go, oh, this poor orphan girl who doesn't have a home. I want them to look at me and go, wow, this woman is brilliant. She's gonna be able to do something major in this society, in this world. What can we do? The system is designed to make you feel so low, so worthless. We all ended up in our situation because of circumstances we couldn't control.
When you hear that your friends just got back from an overseas trip and you haven't seen your family in decades, I've carried with me a kind of a sense that I failed as a human somehow. I failed my family, I failed myself, I failed society. And the truth of the matter is that statelessness is not an individual's fault. It's not a fault of a human being that their human right is being violated, and nationality is a human right.
This isn't an immigration issue. This is a human rights issue. And the solution is for Congress to pass the Stateless Protection Act.
Now we just ask to be treated the same way as you guys. Simple as that.
But I'm proud that now that we have an organization that then says to our members, well, you're not alone, and there's a solution, and we're advocating for it. Join our movement. It's just so empowering.
I found my tribe. They started sharing their stories, and I was like, wait a minute, your story sounds like mine. I am the face of statelessness. It's me.
And you know, we're always among you guys. No one really knows we're here. They just thought we're humans until we are labeled as stateless. And I feel like this myth portrayed it perfectly. You see the people coming out right now, you don't know if what they are, their background.
Thank you, everybody. Before we move to the panel discussion shortly, I first like to open up and welcome Congressman Raskin to make some remarks. Congressman Raskin.
Karina, thank you very much. Delighted to be with everybody. I want to thank HIAS for putting this together, and I want to thank my colleague, Senator Cardin, for his big leadership on this front. I remember first learning about statelessness back when I was in college, and we read Hannah Arendt's Origins of Totalitarianism. She talked about the way in which after World War II, there were millions of people who were displaced and exiled from their original states. They'd been disowned by their states because they were racial or ethnic minorities. And she talked about this being a condition of maximum danger and peril, because statelessness translates very quickly into rightslessness, not having any rights, because so many of the rights that we have as human beings derive from nation-state citizenship and being part of a country that is willing to protect our rights. And so this is something that I've thought about for a long time, and I'm delighted that we've got legislation that will actually deal with it, that will recognize the stateless population in the United States as a uniquely vulnerable population, and will move to create immigration categories and pathways for people to get out of statelessness as quickly as possible and to be recognized as part of America. And if America won't do it, it's hard to see who will. Our country was created, as Tom Paine said, to become an asylum for humanity, and not an insane asylum, but a place of refuge for people seeking political and economic and religious freedom from the oppressor states. And so many people are forced into statelessness because of racial discrimination, ethnic discrimination, religious discrimination in the lands that they came from. So to me, it would be a great point of pride for America to adopt the Stateless Protection Act and to demonstrate to the world that we still are an asylum to humanity, and to demonstrate our belief in universal human rights, and that we can certainly recognize the people amongst us who are forced into this very dangerous posture. So I want to thank you all for organizing around our legislation, and I hope that people will get in touch with their members and begin to educate people throughout Congress about the importance of this legislation. And I yield back to you, Karina, and thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. On behalf of all of us here, we are extremely grateful for your leadership and taking a chance on an overlooked matter. You could, quite frankly, change our lives with the passage of the Stateless Protection Act, and thank you so much. And Matt?
Thank you, Congressman and Karina. We will now move to the panel discussion. I'm going to introduce Charlie Johnson, who is a partner at Aiken Law Firm, and Charlie is going to moderate our panel discussion. So Charlie, please.
Thank you, Matt. Before we jump into the panel discussion, I would like to introduce the panelists. You've met three of them. You've met Karina Ambartsoumian-Clough, who is the executive director of United Stateless, who starred in the film and narrated it, and joins us for Montauk, where the film is featured in the official selection today of the Montauk Film Festival. Also joining us is Phil Huang, who's an entrepreneur and a United Stateless board member, who you also saw in the film. Martine, Kalaw, who's the CEO and founder of Martine Kalaw Enterprises, also United States Stateless board member, and also featured in the film. And then you've heard the organization mentioned by the senator and by the congressman, the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society. We have Smita Dazzo from HIAS, who is the vice president of legal and asylum and a key sponsor of and advisor to United Stateless. So let's jump into some questions and a conversation here. And I'll start with Phil. Phil, recognizing that you've seen this film a number of times, I would love your reactions to it. How does it feel to participate in the film, and what are your impressions about its value to understanding and addressing statelessness?
Thank you, Charlie. To be honest, it was an honor. Like, I was able to connect with other USL members through all this before I even knew the story, and then throughout the whole journey of listening to this story and basically piecing who did what happens who to who, face to the story. But the biggest takeaway from the journey was being able to experience how brave people can be. We all came together. Normally for people like us, like people in our shoes, telling our story is like our biggest fear. Fearing the worst outcome after we tell our story. But instead, everybody came together. We all suppressed our nerves. We smiled, and at least I think we passed along two important messages. The first being that if you are stateless, you aren't alone in the situation, and we are here to we're here to fight and bring awareness to it. And two is USL is offering a safe place for others to join us. For people like us, a place where we can simply chill, relax, and be our true selves. Like, no matter how we are in front of our friends and family, at least I can say this, like, I'm still not really myself. They still don't really get me because they aren't stateless, even though they are the closest people to me in my life. Yeah. Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you, Phil. Among the compelling narratives in the film is the uniqueness of each personal story of statelessness. Martine, would you please share for us how being stateless has impacted you personally, both daily and over the course of your life?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Charlie. I'm very fortunate to say that I am a stateless survivor and have been for quite a number of years. However, during my time, the many years that I was stateless, it was harrowing. It was living a double life because as a stateless person, you're still having to navigate society and fend for yourself and make sure that you have food to eat, place to sleep, education, all of those things. And on top of that, you're navigating this really harrowing situation where you don't have a home, country. And for me, there was this innate fear of being sent to a detention facility indefinitely, because I knew that neither my birth country or my parents' birth country, so my birth country was Zambia, my parents' birth country was Democratic Republic of the Congo, formerly Zaire. Neither country was willing to accept me as a citizen, nor was the United States. So the fear that was constantly in the back of my mind as I was trying to just navigate as an orphaned individual in the United States, who had the fortune of having a benefactor pay my way through prep school. And, I was able to receive scholarships, private donations for college and grad school. But in order to sustain that, I had to, be presentable, make sure that people wanted to invest in me and saw my value. So, I had to present myself in a certain way, balance my education, as well as navigate this fear that I might end up in detention any moment. And so there was a lot of, when we talk about mental health, that definitely played a role in my life, this fear and this anxiety, this lurking anxiety of not knowing what was going to happen to me. And when I watched this film, there's so many parallels with so many of the stories that I hear, particularly Dana's, because we both came to the US when we were 4 years old, from different countries, of course. But, when I think about now, I am 8 months pregnant, and I'm just so happy to be welcoming a child into this world. I cannot imagine putting myself in her shoes, where every year she has to go to the same entity that detained her and risk, not being separated from her child, potentially being detained again. I couldn't imagine that at 8 months pregnant, having to go through that every year, year after year. So, when I think about that, it does bring back a lot of trauma. So that trauma still lives, is still in my, part of my very being. But I am very grateful and fortunate that it was maybe a fluke. Some people would call it luck. Some people would call it the randomness of life, that my case went to the highest immigration court, the Board of Immigration Appeals, and they did what I was told, my attorneys told me, was something that seldom happens, which is they went over my case. And after the second time that my case went to the board, they decided that they were going to close the case and, remand it back to the judge to grant me permanent resident status. But that's a very rare circumstance. And so I'm hoping that with this legislation, people like myself, like Dana, don't have to go through so much and rely on the randomness of a system that's not really designed for people like myself who are stateless.
Thank you, Martine. We celebrate with you your impending motherhood. That's wonderful news, and it sounds like you have more certainty as you raise your child, which is a great gift, and we celebrate that with you. As as lawyers, we study the importance of the rule of law in society, and especially for advising our clients about that rule of law. Yet, because there are no standards under US law on statelessness, stateless people and their legal counsel have limited options to address it. Karina, would you describe this aspect of the statelessness challenge in the context of you and others seeking legal help to address it?
Thank you, Charlie, and congratulations again, Martine. Every time you announce it, it's just so special. The landscape for stateless people is very complicated. A number of our members have been represented by counsel that fully did not understand the issue. We see a gap between what most lawyers are familiar with and what is needed to represent stateless people in a country where there is no path or protections for stateless people that currently exist. This is a major reason why United Stateless has a legal intake, our legal clinic. Matt posted in our chat our intake form, and our program is designed to really help individuals to understand what their case is. As Martine mentioned, she had this one chance in her case that I'm sure took years. It wasn't something that happened overnight, right? And this one chance that worked out, what we're asking for is that the Stateless Protection Act can close these legal gaps that have been perpetuated because of our statelessness. You know, we see it, and I'm sure many on this call would see it, a waste of government resources to do this case by case. And the longevity of time that a person has to go through to even find that one option. Hopefully it will apply to them. We need to have a path to normalize people's status. And that's what the Stateless Protection Act would do.
Thank you, Karina. Well, the good news is, and we're sharing it today, is that the U.S. government is responding, as reflected in recent Department of Homeland Security attention to the statelessness issue, and through the work of Congress in the forthcoming Cardin-Raskin Stateless Protection Act. Smita, would you please highlight how the Stateless Protection Act will address this legal limbo and allow stateless people who are clearly contributing to our communities and country in countless ways, as reflected in the film and on this panel? How will the Stateless Protection Act allow stateless people to step out of the mist?
Thank you for your question, and thank you to USL for having us be part of this really, really important conversation today. I'm honored to be here. First of all, the Stateless Protection Act shouldn't be construed as just immigration legislation, because it's honestly more than that. We all know how tough immigration legislation is to pass. There's a reason why there hasn't been comprehensive immigration reform since the 90s. And existing immigration law is pretty limited. If you don't have close family members that are US citizens or green card holders, or you aren't eligible for a specific available humanitarian status, or have an opportunity through employment, there's no pathway for you to get status in the United States. And stateless individuals shouldn't have to wait for a larger comprehensive reform to be passed. If the SPA passes, this will be the first time that the US would provide specific protections to stateless individuals. Stateless individuals who have no place to claim citizenship will finally be able to have a true home in the United States. For most of us, opening a bank account, renting an apartment, or going to college are things that we take for granted as our rights, right? But stateless persons face these challenges every day. Even immigrants who come to the United States with the hopes of one day becoming US citizens are usually seeking a second citizenship or a new citizenship. But stateless people, through no fault or action of their own, have no country that claims them as their own. And so with this legislation, stateless people who pass background checks and other security clearances will finally have a pathway to a green card. And this means that they can stop living their lives in limbo and actually start living their lives. So it's really, really important legislation, and shouldn't get mixed in with, all of the other, major conversations happening about immigration in the United States.
Well, thank you. Thank you all very much, Karina, Martine, and Phil, to you for being here today, for participating in that exceptional film, and for your courage to speak out not only on your own behalf, but on behalf of the hundreds of thousands of stateless people here in the U.S. And to you, Smita, for your essential advocacy for stateless people. Matt, I'll hand it back to you for Q&A.
Thank you so much, Charlie, Martine, Smita, and Phil. That was absolutely wonderful to have that discussion together. I'd like to remind everyone who is still with us to please add your questions or comments to the Q&A box. We will start reading them through now. First question is no question, but the film is absolutely stunning and so informative. Thank you very much for your advocacy relating to the issue. Thank you so much, Emily from Human Rights First. We're really grateful that we had the opportunity to put together this 10-minute film documentary to really explain the issue of statelessness. I know this is a confusing issue. I say it, even someone affected by it, and had to learn what it is through my time in my case. But I think that the one message that's really clear is that there is a solution, and it's pretty discreet solution that affects a certain number of people in the United States. What is the projected time frame for the Stateless Protection Act to become law? What are potential barriers on the way? I invite all the other panelists to chime in, but the time frame for the Stateless Protection Act is dependent on Congress. We are hopeful that this panel and education event would influence members of Congress to learn more about the protection that we're seeking, and also to reach out to see if there's any potential opportunities to expand the leadership on this issue. We really think that this issue is bipartisan. We are talking about people in this country that simply cannot leave and cannot adjust, perpetual limbo. And I think that framing this issue as a human rights issue is correct. It is within immigration law that the solutions lie, but it's beyond immigration in a sense that we've already exhausted all of our options. And we're really discrete number of people that are experiencing this. Does anyone else have anything to add to that? I'll give a pause. I see Jepson and Freddie O'Hara had two really good questions. Essentially, what can people do that are not stateless to protect and support this cause? First is sign up for the new United Stateless newsletter that is available on our website. We are also we'll be sharing more opportunities to reach out to your local congressperson or elected official to help support this effort. We are launching the film in the fall. As Charlie mentioned earlier, we are submitting the film into several film festivals, and that's why I'm in Montauk today to attend the film festival here. But we are hoping to launch it in the fall and sign up to be able to screen the film among your community and members and get in touch with us, the best way to spread the message. Yes, the recording will be available after. What are specific ways that the act will improve the lives of stateless people in the US? Can I open that up to the panelists? Does anyone else like to answer that question? Phil? You look like you're ready.
To be honest, it's just like being able to really just set roots. You know, right now we're just like everybody's been saying, we're just in limbo. You know, we can't really technically set roots if we don't know what's gonna happen tomorrow. You know, for everybody who has a status, who has a birthright, you know, a place where they could call home, you don't have to worry about that because ultimately you will be able to, let's say something happens, you get to be sent home. But for people like us, we don't know what's gonna happen, you know. And with this Protection Act, like honestly, it's basically, like I said, just basically a place for us to call home. It's hard to really explain something like this because it's like what I said before. Even with our closest ally, our family and friends, like we still kind of like hold to ourselves because at the end of the day, even though they're so close to us, they really don't know what we feel when we go through. So for us to really explain like what is really home, that's really something you gotta be in our shoes to really understand, and it's tough, you know. And with this act, it really will give us a peace of mind, at least for that whole aspect. And worry about what's ahead. Family, you know, extended family, getting a place, you know, the American dream and all that.
And I'll just add, sorry, go ahead, Smita.
No, please, Martine.
When you're stateless, your proximity to an American US citizen, permanent residence doesn't make a difference, right? My mother was a permanent resident. My stepfather was, American born US citizen. That would not have impacted my statelessness. I know plenty of, individuals who are married and are still stateless. Even when I became a permanent resident, I didn't have a passport, right? So when I was applying for US citizenship 5 years later, the question of whether I would be approved or not was still of a question, because when you don't have a passport, it's hard to prove that you're from somewhere so that you can become a US citizen. And it was all at the mercy of whomever was reviewing my case to decide whether or not they felt like they wanted to grant me US citizenship after, reviewing my application. And so, this legislation will really allow individuals like, the individuals we saw in the film and my co-panelists to really have a path that doesn't really exist outside of that. So.
And I was just going to add, one important thing that this act does is it also defines what a stateless person is, which you heard in the film. And, we at HIAS in our work with stateless individuals through USL have come to understand that there are so many people in the United States that are stateless that don't even know that they are, that don't have that recognition because there isn't widespread education about what statelessness is. So not only does it define what a stateless person is, but it also creates a pathway to long-term status, to green card status, not just for the stateless individual, but for their immediate family as well, which is really important, because it's not just the stateless individual that's impacted by statelessness.
Thank you, everybody. For those of us working in asylum and with refugees, how can we better support stateless refugees and asylum seekers in the United States? What are the main challenges they are facing? Very good question. The main challenge, those people that are stateless, that are resettled to the US as refugees, or those people that are stateless that have their asylum case approved and they're currently green card holders, the best advice I can give for organizations that do direct services is to screen for statelessness. It is really important that we empower stateless individuals with their legal stories, what it means to be stateless, and how important it is that those people are able to adjust to become full citizens when they're able to. That is the most main important thing. And if you do run into have any intakes of any individual that have denials or have unfortunate circumstances very similar to the stories that you've heard today, contact United Stateless. We, aside from our advocacy, we do legal clinic work that's led by our staff attorney, Samantha Sitterly, and our case manager, Yvonne Medina. Our goal is to really work with other attorneys and educate around this issue. And I am not a lawyer. I have no desire, but what I do have a desire for is to ensure that all information about a person's legal case is known and relevant to them. I came to the United States when I was 8 years old. And in that process, I was given a final removal order. I married a US citizen when I was 24, and I couldn't adjust my status. I am now 35 years old. And for the first time in my life, I have an opportunity to get a green card, all based on a 10-year strategy that my husband and I and our lawyer worked on. That is time that many people don't have. And I'm the lucky one that I have an option. And our goal is to continue working on case by case individual cases while we're pushing the big dream, which is for Congress to pass the Stateless Protection Act. Does anyone else have anything to add to that before I move to the next question? Okay. Thank you, Cynthia Katz from HIAS, for raising Senator Cardin, Congressman's leadership in this. We're really grateful. We could not do this without strong congressional leadership. We're really grateful. The bill, Terry asks, may I know when the bill effective date is? We are hoping soon. We are ready tomorrow. And it's really, really, there's more room for more people to join this movement. And what we really need is support. We really believe that there's a chance for this to pass, to address this issue in the United States and bring the United States up to a leader, world leader, in how to address this issue internally. Bill Van Horn had a great question. I think this would be great for all of us to answer. Can you give some historical and recent examples of countries, i.e. civil wars, that cause individuals residing in the US to become stateless? Really good question. I think that what is happening in Ukraine is a big indicator that it could lead to statelessness. We already know that statelessness is occurring in Ukraine through through children being born unable to reach their, or rather delayed birth registrations for children in Ukraine, in Russian occupied territories of Ukraine. What can happen and what has happened in the last dissolution of the Soviet Union is what will Ukraine become at the end of this? Will it be independent? Will it be a territory? We really don't know. But what is concerning is what happens to Ukrainian nationals that are living abroad or living within the country or living in the US. Those kind of issues that could arise. We know that the current Tigray region in Ethiopia, that civil war can cause people to lose their nationality. Changing of leadership and government oftentimes causes nationality to be revoked from individuals. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to this question?
I was just going to say that sometimes it's not just, as a result of civil war. Sometimes it's, it's nationality laws that have been enacted by that country. So, for example, of course, my mother and father's birth country, Democratic Republic of Congo, was formerly Zaire, has been in civil war. So that's one reason that I would not have been recognized, or I wasn't recognized as a citizen of that country. However, Zambia, which was my birth country, it's just because in their constitution, it said that at a certain age, you have to claim citizenship, which I did not know because I was also dealing with my mother and stepfather dying and becoming orphans. So I missed that timeline or the date or time that I needed to establish my citizenship. So there are some nuances across various countries outside of civil war as well.
Really,
I would just add also ethnic minorities, born in countries that don't accept them. For example, Rohingyas born in Burma are stateless. People born in former Soviet Union in countries that no longer exist are stateless. Many are. So there's so many reasons why a person can be stateless. But I think that what you should take from this panel and this event today is generally statelessness does not happen because of the fault of the individual or because they did some proactive, step in becoming stateless. It's something that happened to them, either at their birth or at some later point in their life.
Thank you, Smita. That raises a really important fact about statelessness, because statelessness at the root is caused by discriminatory factors, discriminating someone based on their ethnicity, religion, political association. We've recently saw that with the 222 Nicaraguans that were denationalized for their political activity. Thankfully, the Department of State did welcome and provide refuge for those 222. And we're hoping that things like the Stateless Protection Act, if it was in place, would have allowed for more direct protections en route. And that answers a great question that Gregory Luke asked, essentially, can you talk about what it would look like legally if the Stateless Protection Act is passed and in effect? And what it would look like, it's similar to what we were seeing in France, and in the UK, another, first world country that has passed stateless status determination and protections for stateless people. It would look like the US immigration law would have a code for statelessness. That if someone can identify as stateless, go through the procedure of proving statelessness that's protected by international court and through the UNHCR conventions that identify what statelessness is, how countries can address it and prevent it from happening. It would allow for an application, ideally 6-month waiting period, and that person's given an opportunity to self-identify and be put on a track to a protective status, ideally a green card to one day be able to naturalize. Our goal and hope is that this act would support the U.S. Department's role globally on addressing this issue by doing it internally at home. I think we can do this. We've seen this happen abroad, and I think the United States is ready to do this, as Senator Cardin and Representative Raskin both mentioned. And Matt, thank you so much for posting all of these really helpful links through the chat. I will also jot in my email. Please, please, please reach out to me, especially if you're interested to learn more about the Stateless Protection Act and how can we better engage with members of Congress to learn more and to support this empowered movement. And without further ado, Matt, may I pass it over to you?
Sure. We have a few minutes for closing remarks from our panelists. We will continue to answer any Q&A that you do drop in the chat, but I'm going to hand this over now, I think, to Charlie, just to deliver some closing remarks, and then to each of our panelists, and then we'll wrap up at 10:30. So Charlie, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. I feel as though this forum has realized all that we had hoped it would. Foremost, to profile this incredibly challenging issue through the experiences of real people who you got to see in the film, and of course in the context of this panel discussion, that we have folks in our government that are paying attention to this is enormous. That there's a bill that's about to be introduced is incredibly essential. Nothing happens without some rules and guardrails and standards under our law directing the results that we all want, which is for these people to be able to climb out of the mist and exist among us with status that is stable and where they can raise their families in the light of day. So we will continue to advocate as a group here, those who are participating and as witnesses to this. Please join us. Please reach out. Please ask how you can help, because there are lots of ways to do that, and we look forward to collaborating with you.
Smita, do you have any closing remarks?
All I would say is reiterate what's been said before. This is a really important issue, even if you're not stateless. If you care about this, if you care about the injustice that you're seeing here, become an ally. Connect with United Stateless. There are a lot of ways to get involved. If you're a lawyer, contact HIAS, contact USL, work with us to support stateless individuals in the US. Thanks.
Martine.
I was on mute, sorry. The beginning of my stateless journey was scary, and I felt alone, like I didn't have a voice. And as throughout the remainder of my journey, it's been so rewarding to find United Stateless or have them find me. It was just very serendipitous, and to feel like while our stories are unique and compelling in their own and very different ways, that there's a common heartbeat in our stories. And Phil said it best. It's like we're able to complete each other's sentences in many ways. So I do not feel alone. I don't feel voiceless anymore. And what's even more reassuring is to be part of this conversation, and just to see the questions that are coming in, and to know that we have allies, and that there is an opportunity for us through this legislation, to get some relief. And I just really want to thank everyone who's part of this conversation, for your interest, for your inquisitiveness, and for your feeling motivated to do something, anything, and we welcome that. So thank you.
Phil, if you were leaving our audience with one thought, what would it be?
Man, you always got to switch with the question with me. I had that first question in mind, the answer ready to go, and you switch it up on me. But honestly, like, I just want to thank everybody that came, for someone that's stateless, to see that other people that care about our cause, and, actually put aside an hour of their time to understand this, ask questions, it really means a lot. Because, like, at the end of the day, not a lot of people really give you the time of day. Let's go with that. And it means a lot. Basically, it just means a lot to us. And thank you all.
Thanks, Phil. It's always a pleasure to spend time with United Stateless and everyone involved in this project. Karina, I'm going to hand it over to you. We do have one more Q&A to quickly touch on, and then Karina's going to wrap us up, and that will conclude the webinar.
Thank you so much. The last question, are there any cases in which adoption leads to statelessness? Yes, there are. This oftentimes happens through international adoptions. In fact, there's a great narrative and story about a woman by the name of Rebecca Trimble, who lives in Alaska and found herself discovered that she's stateless after living in the United States as a child into an adopted family. And fortunately, through the leadership of Senator Murkowski, she was able to adjust her status and become a permanent resident. This happened in the past 2 years. This is Matt just linked to the story. This is a phenomenal story and experience, and great way to close out this story in today's day. In closing, I want us to reaffirm that our shared goal is to create a world, a country, where stateless individuals are no longer marginalized or forgotten. As we depart today, let us carry the spirit of compassion and empathy with us, and guide us into what we can do together next, which is to really work together to address this issue. And we need your help. So I will drop my email in the chat. You've all received an email today from me today. Please stay in touch and let us end this issue together. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks. And that concludes our webinar. Have a good day.